Police Chief Dietman, would you just kind of share what it means to you to be recognized, by Representative Gallagher today, as far as, the job that your crew did with Roger Blau and facing a fire that you probably never faced before on a ship?
We've had a couple of these before, and it's really nice that having the congressman acknowledge us. It's a lot of the guys, when you talk to firemen and law enforcement, public safety, they feel that they're just doing their job that they're hired to do. And when things like this come along, it really, it shows that people are watching what you're doing day to day, and it just reiterates why we do what we do.
Chief, can you kind of describe what it was like that day to fight the fire, in comparison, how it compares to other fires you guys see on a regular basis?
Sure. Both fires are very unique. I mean, imagine turning your oven at home to broil and crawling inside of it, and that's ultimately what it gets down to. The temperatures that the firefighters, when they're going in, the conditions are twice what they would in a regular structural home. We had exterior 1,000 to 1,200 degrees on the steel on the deck. Areas that we're walking, the guys' boots were actually starting to melt and stick to it a little bit. So understanding that there's a whole lot more cooling in a structure fire. The guys go in, they spray water on something burning, and it goes out, and things get better. Here they have to stay in, they've got to put it out, and they've got to stay and cool it. And it's a whole lot more, it's quite a bit more labor intensive. Just to sit in that heat for that much longer, it's really draining on firefighters. So when we get to a vessel fire like this, the resources, the assets that we need are 5 times what they normally would be on a structure fire.
And what kind of training goes into fires like these vessel fires?
That's kind of a hard one. As firefighters and all the training that everybody throughout the U.S. goes through, it's a land-based fire, meaning that we're taught how to make entry into homes and businesses and buildings like this. We deal with vehicles on the road, but they don't really teach you a lot about mobile vessels like that. There's a lot that goes into shipboard firefighting. A lot of specialty classes. We've had some of our guys that have been out in Toledo at Mirad before they had closed up, which is a federal facility for shipboard firefighting. And after our last real big one in 2015, we've reached out to a lot of the departments throughout the Great Lakes just to find out what they're doing, looking where they're finding some training and things like that. So again, going back to our training facility we've got a tugboat out there, a lot of different things that we try to incorporate what we might be running into on a boat. And again, getting down to base ship and just going through these boats. They call them sister ships, but there's no two that are alike. And you get lost really quick.
And about the MABUS, you guys utilize that and talk about that, about getting help from other departments and how you guys coordinate that?
Correct. MABUS is a mutual aid box alarm system. It's pre-scripted responses so that me as a commander, whoever is rolling up, doesn't have to try to think about where resources are coming from. Door County was a little bit behind. We got onto it a few years ago and realized that there's a lot of benefit to it. So initially we can ask dispatch to page it out, and before we know it, we've got a lot of resources coming, and I don't care where they're coming from because it's already pre-scripted, and it just makes it a lot easier.
How long was the ship in harbor?
They came in June or July. They came in as an early layup between COVID and everything that was happening with the steel mills. They came in, I'm not exactly sure, in June, July. So they've been doing a lot of work on the vessel, some make-ready, minor repairs, things like that, just to be ready. From what I understand, they were ready to leave port about the first week in March and start sailing as the locks opened.
Chief Dietman, how close was it? You guys were able to contain that fire before you had to release any of the fuel on board. Did it get close, or at what point would you had thought that maybe they would have to get to that point to release the 70,000 gallons of fuel that was on?
Where the beltways were, we had a pretty good idea where the fuel tanks were on the aft end. We had some concerns, but the way the layout and the people from the shipping company explained it to us, if it was confined to the beltways, that knock on wood, we should have been okay. So getting to that point would have been extremely hard to start offloading fuel. We did make ready, and we actually separated the Blau from the Barker with tugs, and just in case things were to go wrong, we didn't want it sinking right amongst the other vessels that were tied up.
Good.
And then Representative, can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to come down here today and give them this, what you said on the House floor?
Well, I mean, I think it's easy to take our firefighters for granted and what they do on a day-to-day basis. Even when they're not having to fight a fire like this. I've been fortunate enough to go on a few ride-alongs and see it. My stepdad's a firefighter, and so it's incredible work. But I just want to make sure we don't take it for granted, and wherever possible, we're shining a light on the very professional and heroic work that they do. And certainly a fire like this is something that happens very rarely, thankfully. But they did a phenomenal job. Chief, your entire team really responded to the call and did an absolutely phenomenal job. And we wanted to recognize that and make sure that there's a record of it for a long time to come.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about how this is, it goes on record, it's something that's going to be in the history books, kind of, and why it's important to make sure that happens?
Yeah, maybe this sounds a bit corny, but I mean, I'd be curious why, we got a lot of firefighters here, why they became firefighters. I imagine it's to serve the community. So in my mind, something small like this is just a way of communicating to the community here what an awesome profession this is, and hopefully inspire that next generation of first responders to want to step up and serve.
Representative, when you brought this award out, and as you mentioned it earlier, read it out loud to other representatives in the state, what was the reception like there, and did you receive any kind of comments to pass along to these firefighters here or anything like that? What was the reception?
It was thunderous applause and a standing ovation. No, unfortunately, a lot of times when you're giving a speech on the House floor, it's not that well attended. But certainly this story has attracted a lot of attention from our local legislators, our state senators, our state assembly men and women who wanted me to pass along just how proud they were of the Sturgeon Bay firefighters. And it's just it's one of those things where it makes you proud to be part of this community.
And do you hope to continue to pass along this kind of recognition and thank you to other communities around the state for their service?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we do occasionally do things like this where we'll read something officially into the Congressional Record, but we also started something called the Northeast Wisconsin Service Award during the pandemic, the News Award, and that was kind of our way of recognizing a lot of the unsung heroes who may not be firefighters or cops or military service members, but just people that found a way to go above and beyond in a very unusual circumstances, whether it's someone who figured out how to keep a local grocery store open, or the people working at Bay Shipbuilding who figured out how to take care of their employees and keep them working and providing for their families. So that's something that's been really gratifying, just to use this office, which doesn't belong to me, it belongs to Northeast Wisconsin, to really highlight all the amazing stories of service that we've seen in Northeast Wisconsin. Right.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to shift gears really quickly. Obviously,
There's always a political question. Yeah, you got
Sorry
to
to
feel
do
this
it.
one.
Yeah. So obviously the impeachment trial is going on right now. Your comments have been used in the trial, your tweet, the video calling it Banana Republic crap, things like that. What's your reaction to your social media posts from January 6th being used?
Yeah, well, I was surprised, quite frankly, because if they're suggesting that I'm a credible sort of witness for the case, then it undermines that case, because obviously I argued against impeachment and wrote an op-ed arguing against it. So that was interesting to see. So far, I haven't watched all the proceedings, but it seems like it's been a very sort of emotional case that was presented. I think there are broader questions about the constitutionality of it and just whether this is a prudential move that need to be discussed and thus far have not been explored. So my hope is this wraps up next week. I don't think it's likely that the president is going to be convicted, and I think the initial arguments for impeachment, and the biggest one that the Democrats initially made, was that they needed to remove Trump from office immediately. He could not be trusted to remain in office again. Well, the problem with that argument is as soon as Nancy Pelosi finished making it, she took the weekend off and then didn't transmit the articles of impeachment until after Trump had already left office. So to me, that is at least one thing that undermines the case, as well as the factual dispute about whether what we saw that day, which was horrific, and obviously I've been critical of it and I did not go along with the objections, whether it actually amounted to a willful incitement of insurrection.
Got it. And then just one more question. You were very adamant on calling on the president to stop what was going on January 6th. Can you explain, do you think he did that or no?
Well, in that moment, I think it already escalated beyond the point of anyone's control. I don't remember the exact time I put that statement out, but they had already breached the security perimeter. And even if the president had been quicker with a tweet, which he did end up putting out later that night, I'm not sure it would have prevented what we saw. I mean, obviously, I think the time to prevent it was long before that, right? And not give people the false hope that somehow Mike Pence, the vice president, was going to overturn the results of the election on January 6th. So it's tragic. I think we're going to be thinking for a while about what happened. We're still going to be investigating it, and I certainly hope anyone that broke the law on that day, particularly people that were complicit in violence, particularly the people that were complicit in the murder of a police officer, should be held accountable and met with the full force of the law, because that's unacceptable.
Anything else on January 6th you want to add? Impeachment trial? Thank you.
Thank you.